What is up, Knights? Welcome to another episode of Thought Factory. In these episodes, I watch a Inside Star Citizen video or episode, and I tell you my thoughts and my opinions on it. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and do this. Anything that's shown in these videos is subject to change. Capacity for battle. So that's the title.
The biggest influence in a combat situation is what the players do.
You can do a lot of small decisions and they all matter.
With these capacitors, we're looking to give players that extra option to make the situation more dynamic. And the more dynamic that situation is, we're hoping the more dynamic the combat is.
Capacity
a good combat experience should be the actions that the player can do in order to modify the outcome of a battle, but not...
Yeah, right now to me, the combat, ship-to-ship combat is... It's okay. I mean, you know, to me, it's just circling around each other, firing at each other. I mean, that's what it is to me. You know, hopefully they make it a little bit more interesting. It's supposed to be like more World War II-ish, you know, style combat, like, you know, but right now it's not. I think you feel more like you're just kind of in a floating current. You know, you're able to go this way, go that way, and you know, in one spot. You know, so it doesn't feel right to me. But you know, this is like the future. So you know, maybe they have like advanced thrusters. You know, that's advanced stabilizer thrusters. So, you know, it is what it is. But hopefully they add more content, like when it comes to ship-to-ship battles.
Doing in a way that feels gamey. A lot of our combat performance is based on equipment, which you set up very, very easily. Some of the decisions you do in combat are just simply based on, hey, am I overclocking my power plant or not? That is also not a very interesting choice. You do it once before combat, and that's it. You might just...
Well, a lot of people don't actually overclock much of anything. A lot of new people, especially people who don't know you can overclock. In Star Citizen, you can overclock systems. Now, these come with benefits, but they also come with, you know, bad things. So overclocking, you know, you're using more power. Maybe it can take from, so if I overclock my weapons, maybe it can take from my shields, or if I overclock my shields, maybe it can take from my weapons. I think capacitors are something that's integrated into a component already that you install, and it gives a little extra boost to that component for a limited time, if I'm not mistaken. I could be totally wrong on that, but anyways, we'll continue.
Move your shield sectors around a bit, right? But the amount of decisions you really do during combat is very limited.
It's a very linear feeling to the combat. So at the moment, you're purely thinking about how you get your gun on your opponent. But we want that to be a very different approach now, where you're thinking about your gun, but then you've got to think about the time where you might have to, you know, kind of outmaneuver them, or you might have to be in a defensive situation if they've managed to get their guns on you.
And then we were like, okay, how can we put in more interesting and more exciting decisions into that, right? And this brings us to the capacitor gameplay, which for us is a way to get very short and exciting.
See, so he's overclocking his systems right now.
It's about giving players the choice that they can make a difference.
Overclocking just about all of them. And in my opinion, I wouldn't think that would be a good idea, because in the future, you're going to be able to burn out components. So maybe if you overclock too much, you burn that component out. Now you got to send your engineer to the back to repair it.
Imagine it as a pool of energy that you have, and this is extra energy. This isn't energy that the ship already has.
This is a pretty cool. Right now we don't have all this, so I guess this is something that's going to be added in the future. You know, with the hood. I'm not sure what this purple bar is. I don't know. And then, of course, you have these 3 bars over here. And this one's all red. And, you know, those are missiles, like missile selections, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, some of this stuff we have, of course, we have the throttle control, we have the quantum fuel and the hydrogen fuel. So we have all that already. Lock, target, auto, if I'm not mistaken. We have gear, coupled, and BSP. That stuff we have. But some of this newer stuff, there's something else. Panther repeater. I don't know what this is either.
It has it's an extra pool of energy on the ship. And then imagine that you can now choose.
Okay, so that's balanced out. Maybe this is the capacitors that they're talking about. Maybe this is showing their, where you're putting your energy. That's what it looks like to me. And again, capacitors are limited, so it's more to, when you've got an advantage, you can even give yourself more of an advantage, with the capacitor for a limited amount of time.
Where this energy goes. So if you need some extra thrust to kind of outmaneuver or escape a situation you're not happy in, you can move all the extra energy for a limited amount of time to the thrusters, and then they'll perform at a higher window, basically until the capacitor runs out.
These effects are drastic. These are really drastic. You cannot swap charge.
See, this is you have this little system down here where I am right now. It's like the triangle. And you can already divert power, so you can take power and divert it all to weapons. So, depending on how much power, you can put 100% power to weapons. As of right now, I don't think it affects your thrusters or your shielding right now. It could. I could be mistaken. But, so you already have where you can divert power. But capacitors are completely different. You're not really diverting power. You're just taking and adding power to that system. So it's better in a sense than diverting power. But diverting power is still going to be important because, that power is not, I guess, finite. But, it is finite, but it's not. Capacitor, very limited. You got a limited amount of uses, I'm sure, and a limited time you can use.
These effects are drastic. These are really drastic. You cannot swap charge.
There's Panther repeater. So I'm guessing this is like the capacitor charging these weapons up, making them stronger.
Just between, for example, guns to shields or something like that. That doesn't work. But you can tell each subsystem which should be preferred for regenerating. So instead of taping down your fire button, if you use energy weapons, you are now forced to pick when you're actually going to fire them.
Okay, so see, when he puts the capacitors all the way up,
taping down your fire,
the regeneration to the shields come up as well. So it's a temporary, my shields are about to fail, boom, let me hit this, and it sends a quick jolt to the system to help with regenerating shields.
Button. If you use energy weapons, you are now forced to pick when you're actually going to fire them, right? And these weapons, they will run out very, very fast.
And the players that can think ahead and manage that situation, we think they'll have the advantage in combat.
So I think what they're doing with energy weapons is they're kind of making them like ballistics. When you have ballistic weapons in Star Citizen, you have a finite ammo. You can only fire so much before you run out. I think lasers, it's infinite. However, you have your weapons can overheat or barrels, and you'll eventually, instead of right now in the system, you can just keep firing your your lasers. You can just keep firing them. In the future, I think they're making it to where, you'll eventually run out of a power source. You'll eventually run out of power source for a little bit. So, you'll fire, and then, you'll have to let your power source charge back up again before you can fire again. And this basically, limits I'm just going to get on my lasers and just constantly fire them. Without having to worry about anything else. And then the capacitors, of course, is going to help that out. So let's say you're running out hit a capacitor, and you got that energy,
You need to strategically employ the limited resources you have.
So it isn't just about the flight of the ship, or it isn't just about one particular angle on the ship. It's about all these different things that come together to give a particular style of combat, which we want to be a positional combat situation.
And I'm very convinced that this is the interesting part where dogfighting will get really exciting again. In terms of where we are exactly right now is we almost have the archetype tunings for our four main fighter categories done.
I was under the impression that this is how ballistics and lasers were going to work. Now, this is me being under the impression, so again, I'm probably totally wrong. But I was under the impression that ballistics can go through shields for the most part, and they can hit, the armor. It takes damage. The armor absorbs those ballistics, absorbs that kinetic energy more than a laser would. Okay, so yeah, they can go through shields, but that armor, the ballistics are just, that armor can take a pounding from the ballistics. However, shields protect against lasers. And so, those shields, that energy hits that shield, that laser hits that shield, and it dissipates, or it protects the shielding. But if that shielding ever goes down and the lasers are there, no matter what armor you have on that ship, them lasers are going to burn through that armor. It is just going to melt that armor. Now, this is my understanding of it. Could be totally wrong. But, to me, that was like the advantages of ballistics versus the advantages of lasers. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
Done. The next step is to make sure that the weapons fit in these categories, and that we're getting the kill times and the maneuvering offsets into the place where we want them.
We don't want to kind of limit the ships enough where it doesn't feel like the ships are at a performance window. We want to keep that performance window where it feels like you're pushing the limits of yourself. And
see how they're just
and that's something we're
doing this.
To kind of keep, because we're kind of happy with that
it's not that good to me.
In terms of the current balance.
So it's a very complex undertaking. We want to do it right.
Now we have to do a lot more testing. We have to do a lot more balance. We're going to use what happens and look at the results, look at all the things the players are doing, look at the choices they're making, and make sure it's right, and make sure the balance is correct, and make sure all the differences between the ships align with our expectation of where they should be. It's going to be a feature that evolves over several releases for us.
Since their inception, our vehicle and player experience teams have worked to realize the full promise and potential of spaceflight and combat in both the Persistent Universe and Squadron 42. And this capacitor gameplay is just one more way they aim to put the ultimate fate of vehicle combat more solidly in your hands. But the work doesn't stop there. On our road to Invictus launch week, let's turn our attentions now to operator modes, what they are, how they'll serve as the foundation for Multicrew gameplay going forward, and how the next one that's currently in development looks to redefine the way we use missiles for a more engaging and tactical experience.
A key part of operator modes is to give the ship a purpose, that each seat has access to certain tools on the ship.
Okay, so basically what they're saying is, if a pilot is in the pilot seat, he's most likely going to be flying. Most likely he will be. If a co-pilot is in the co-pilot seat, he'll probably have the ability to take over. After all, he's a co-pilot. So if the pilot has to do something, your friend can take over. Now, right now, we don't have that as of this video right now, as of 3:13. We don't have that. Right now, when you're playing with friends, you get in the pilot seat, your friend gets into the co-pilot seat, and he can't really do much. He can call for a landing, request or whatever. But that's, it's pretty limited right now. But in the future, your co-pilot will be able to scan while your pilot can focus on, flying. Your co-pilot can maybe, determine what target's more of a threat, again, while your pilot's flying. Maybe they'll have an engineering station, where you have your engineer, he's sitting there and he's, checking the systems and making sure that they're operating correctly or operating at 100% efficiency. Maybe you have like a shielding technician, that he's sitting there at the seat and he mainly just works on the shield. So, you're in a fight and he's having to divert power to, like the left side of the shield or the right side or port or, whatever you want to call it in nautical terms. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much what they're talking about.
This is quite exciting because it can open up Multicrew quite significantly.
Oh yes, I
gives a lot of freedom to allow people to
look at this bridge.
In different ways.
This right here is the reclaimer. I have one. The left is pilot, right is co-pilot. That's normally how
it basically allows us to split out a feature. So when you're in that seat, you get all the information that is on a particular task, and that's basically what an operator mode is.
So operator modes that exist in the game right now are quantum drive. Scanning is an operator mode.
And we've also got mining as well.
Looking forwards, certainly Multicrew is not quite where we want to be at the moment.
No.
And so we decided to manipulate operator modes a little bit and allow different people in different seats to be in different operator modes. So the co-pilot could be in, for example, scanning mode, while the pilot is in flight mode.
Makes sense.
This would allow the co-pilot to have control of all the scanning stuff, while the pilot doesn't have to worry about that, doesn't have control of those items, and can instead just worry about flight. So that's quite an exciting change for Multicrew going forward, especially. So the operator mode we're working on at the moment is missile operator mode, which is the first new one that we're looking at.
The goal behind missile operator mode is to give players quick access to the missiles in combat, because there's a particular range and a particular time when missiles are the right tools to use in a situation in combat. And it was taking a lot of what we learned with the previous method with missiles to...
Now, this is what I wonder what's going to happen in the future with missiles and stuff, especially when it comes to like torpedoes. If you ever look at like a torpedo bomber, which is like a retaliator. Retaliator can be a torpedo bomber. It makes me wonder if there's going to be a guy that's basically prepping the torpedo in the back, prepping it and getting it ready, for it to be used in combat. Maybe, he sends it, says, oh, get the torpedoes ready, and he goes back there and he arms the torpedo or whatever. I'm not sure how that's going to work. But, I think that would be cool as well. But, same thing with missiles. If you got a missile rag, what if it jams up? Then you got to get someone to go back there. I wonder if they're going to go in depth like that. I mean, it'd be cool if they did. This is a hardcore game. If you're looking to play something quick and get out, I don't think this is for you. This is going to be immersive, and it's going to be hardcore.
Communicate that. The way that missile operator mode works right now is in a single pilot ship, you have the option to switch between your guns and then into missile operator mode and back out again. So you can't use...
Okay, so as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, you can be in two modes right now. So you can as of right now, you can fire your guns, you can lock on, fire your missiles. Right now, what he's talking about, I think, is he's talking about, you can fire your guns, but now you're going to have to switch. So you got to switch, bring up your missile, and fire your missiles. So I don't think you're going to be able to fire your gun while you're firing your missiles. I think you have to choose one or the other. Which is cool, in my opinion. A lot of people might not like that. but it makes it to where multi-crew ships, such as like a 2-seater ship versus a 1-seater ship, have an advantage over a 1-seater ship. And that makes sense to me. It really does, because, if you have 2 sets of eyes, 2 sets of eyes is better than 1. So I think that's really cool, and I hope they continue doing what they're doing when it comes to that.
Both at the same time. But if you've got a multi-crew ship and you're in a pilot seat and you've got a co-pilot, you can use the guns, and your co-pilot can have complete...
But here's another thing. While it does have an advantage, it also has a disadvantage. You have 2 people that have to work together. So if your pilot is facing one way, and the guy that's operating the missiles is trying to lock on a target over here, they've got to communicate. That's going to be an issue. So that could be a problem.
Control over the missile system at the same time.
You can pre-select how many missiles you want to fire, lock them all on, and then fire them all in a volley. That's quite fun to watch. Big anime blast of missiles as they fire off into the distance.
We're hopeful that we've given the players enough information that when they lock a target in missile operator mode, they understand that they've locked it. But then,
see, again, this is new, man. I've you got your missiles here, which are strike forces too. Ignite 2. Is that another missile? That might be a missile. I don't know. And then you got these little, I guess they fill up targeting, and then now it's showing like the missile range on it, I guess.
They also understand the next stages, which is how much of a lock do you have, and what are your chances of hitting your target at that particular time. And being in missile operator mode gives you all that information. So along with missile operator mode, we've also done a complete rework of the missiles, which now fly under an IFCS2 system, so they're very, very similar to the ships.
So for example, one of the big changes is missiles now have fuel. So as they maneuver more, as they accelerate, they will consume more fuel, which allows you to outrun them and outmaneuver them.
And they're going to have a very limited opportunity to come back at you if you manage to evade a missile.
That is so cool, man.
We've also split up the missile's flight into 3 different phases. So the first phase is boost phase, where the missile is attempting to just pick up speed and get to top speed as fast as it can. Once the boost phase has expired, it goes into intercept phase, where the missile is trying to generally track towards the target, attempting to intercept it. And then when it gets even closer, it switches to full tracking, what we call terminal phase, where it puts all of its effort into trying to hit the target, because it's now pretty close. As far as where we're at right now, we're confident about it. We didn't rush it out last quarter. There were a few quality of life things that we wanted to make sure we had before we released.
We're a fairly small team, but I'm very proud of the efforts that we've done so far, and also our interaction with the community as well, because we are a player-facing team, because we're an experienced team. A big part of this for us is players understanding that the game's always moving forwards. We're always trying to improve everything we've ever done, and it's not going to stop.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that in addition to the decisions you make before you take off, capacitor gameplay looks to add even more during the heat of battle. That operator modes are the next step in making true multi-crew gameplay a reality. And that for the missiles themselves, sure, you can use countermeasures, but it's going to be a lot more fun to just outfly them from now on. Now we're only a week.
I kind of have an issue with that statement. The reason being is because if you can just simply outmaneuver the missiles, then why have flares or countermeasures? Why have those? If hopefully the missiles aren't so bad that you can just outmaneuver, easily. Because in my opinion, that would just break missiles. Why would you have missiles if you can just outmaneuver them easily? Maybe they're trying to put a more strategic thing to where, you don't just missile spam. But, I still think, especially if you're, paying a lot of money in Star Citizen, like in-game money on systems such as like the missiles, they need to be worth something. So, again, I guess it depends on if you buy a crappy missile versus a more expensive missile. That depends on, what you get out of it. So you get what you pay for.
A week away from Invictus, we're going to get to see the latest the various ship manufacturers of the verse have to offer, and see the imposing UEE Navy fleet up close. Like, really up close. I'm excited. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Jared. I'll go ahead and let that finish. I appreciate you guys joining me. And, again, if you want to talk about what was discussed in this video, just comment in the section below and we can talk about it. Join the Discord. We can talk about it in there as well. Everyone has their thoughts and opinions on things. But I appreciate you guys watching this episode of Thought Factory with me, and I hope to see you guys in the next. Y'all have a good one.